Hi, guys. Welcome to tonight's live chat. I figured I would sign in a little bit earlier, as I always do, just to make sure that Instagram is up and running. So far, so good. I think we're doing okay. And I know that the rest of you will just sign in whenever you get here. Oh, nope. Instagram is yelling at me. So let me transfer links. That's exactly why I do this. Signing on early. Tonight's conversation is going to be an interesting one. No, I don't want to post a video. It's going to be an interesting one because I think a lot of you have experienced the reality of having a form of truth or having a truth or wanting someone to just completely understand you and get you, and yet they're not. It's like they are completely far removed, right, from what feels like a reality to you or what is a reality to you. So we're going to get started in just a minute. I'm signing on. I'm waiting on Instagram. Come on, Instagram. Instagram is really hard to manage when it comes to other social media platforms like YouTube. Here we go. So it looks like we're doing okay. I'm going to type them a note. I'm going to say, if you'd like to join us, visit my channel. Link in my bio. Okay, we're good with Instagram. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and jump into this, okay? This is interesting. I was just sitting here a couple minutes before I came on, and I'm like, let me look at some things here because I do want to bring up conspiracy theories later. I'm going to touch on the reality of some of the research that's floating in the world of psychology. It's interesting when it comes to the topic of truth, bias, research in terms of being believed, being well understood, and even the topic of meta-cognition can be really difficult. Meta-cognition is basically the theory that you are trying to fully understand and process one's thoughts. So really it's thinking about thinking, and it's delving into thinking, and it's really, what's the word I'm looking for? It's really teasing apart. I think I'll use that word. What's truth and what is not truth. A lot of psychology focuses on metacognition, but we're lacking in research when it comes to providing understanding and knowledge and helping people understand that your way may not be the only way that's true. You know what I mean? That there's different ways of viewing things, there's different ways of viewing life. I'm sure those of you who are joining me tonight, and I did get some information on this topic over the last weekend. Somebody said to me, she's like, here's an article that talks about truth and not being believed. And have you ever delved into this? And yes, I have. I know a lot of you on this channel tonight are probably looking for this live chat to meet you personally where you are, at least help you understand some things about your own situation. So we're going to do that. I also want to give you some new terms. So I encourage you to write some of this down or go back and replay this live chat. I'm going to drop some new terms so that you can fully understand what's going on here in your family. For example, we're going to use family for right now. In your family, if you had to talk to family members and express something to them, believing that because you are family, because you are blood, because, you know, your relationship's not that bad, it's a pretty decent relationship, that you would be believed. I wonder if my internal question is, I wonder if any of you, let me know in the chat box, have dealt with a situation in your family where you thought, you know what, I'm going to tell this to Aunt Mimi. She should be able to understand. Or I'm going to tell it to my dad. Dad should be able to understand. He's always been understanding. You go to this family member and they say to you, are you kidding me? You really believe that? How's that possible? Where's your proof? Are you sure that's true? I think you need to get more rest. Maybe you're stressed. Nope. Maybe you're delusional. Oh, did you see a psychiatrist for that yet? Those different things I see in therapy all the time, and I'm sure you've dealt with that within your family. So I'm going to tease apart in this live chat tonight what's going on with that other person, that family member, that person you're in a relationship with, that spouse, husband, wife. What's going on that makes believing you or hearing you, or at least what's the word that I'm looking for? Considering, that's the word that I'm looking for. Considering what it is that you've brought to them. I'm going to tease that apart for you tonight. Like, what's going on with this that they can't understand where I'm coming from, or they refuse to understand. We call that self-deception. When you refuse to understand, you're going to deceive yourself into believing that what's being brought to me is not the truth. And for a lot of you, especially those of you who have some very interesting theories, and we're going to get into that too a little bit later, but for those of you who have really interesting theories and experiences and belief systems, I'm sure you've gone to your family and they've thought to themselves, or they've said out loud to you, this can't be happening. No, that's wrong. So there's a lot of self-deception in this process of truth telling and believing what you're saying. There's also what we call low objectivity. Low objectivity. There's no objective consideration of what you're saying. Even as a therapist, when I've been in this field for 15 years. I'm gonna just highlight my track record here just for a little bit. This is not the first go around for me in psychology. So I've been doing this for 15 years. I had a lot of experience in various capacities in treating individuals, children, teens, and families. And over all of that experience, anytime in whatever environment I was working in, anytime that a client would come to me and say, okay, Miss Tamara, that's what the kids call me, Miss Tamara, I have this happening. I believe this. I believe this is happening to me. I'm almost certain this is my experience. Or they may say something like, you won't believe the craziest thing happened to me the other day. Then they start opening up. It would be terrible for me to sit there and say, no, I'm sure I'd believe it. And then after the story is told to me, I take up the attitude of, that couldn't have possibly happened. Where are we getting when we do that, right? We're getting absolutely nowhere. So you almost have to have a high level of objectivity, not a low level. Family members have low levels of objectivity, meaning they don't have the patience, the ability, the knowledge, the education, the patience, whatever, to assess what you're saying and do it from an objective position. They really do take a very subjective, opinionated, emotionally charged view of what you're telling them. And that can really lead to you feeling ignored, minimized, disbelieved, and invalidated. Invalidation is part of this whole conversation tonight. So we're going to be talking a lot about that invalidation. Let me also say that there's something known as confirmation bias. This is something that can happen for individuals that you go to. Let's say your mom. So I'm going to give you an example of confirmation bias. Let's say, for example, you go to your mom, you say, hey, mom, I've just been struggling a little bit with my faith. I'm not really sure I believe in God. This is an example. I'm not sure that, everything I've been taught from church, everything I've been taught from you is even the right thing. I know Dad's a pastor, but he has anger management issues. He drinks on the weekend. What kind of pastor is that? It's causing me to just not want to be of the faith at all anymore. I just don't want religion anymore. Okay, that's a very common complaint. Very factual, understandable point of view. Totally get it, okay? So, but let's say your mom is not that kind of a person. So then what does she do? Well, she starts saying there's a lot of sin in your life and you really need to get in order with God. What happens if you die tomorrow? You may not be able to go to heaven if you don't believe in God, right? Mom starts to unravel all these various theories that are religion based that really puts fear in you. Where confirmation bias comes in is you're trying to explain your experience. And this very, very religious, very conservative mom then kind of reduces your reality. So you're being invalidated technically. She may not be saying it in words, but her reaction to you is very invalidating. Confirmation bias says, I have a belief in a particular set of information or in a variety of information sources that supports my existing beliefs. So I'm going to go to the Joyce Meyer's book that I bought in Barnes and Noble, and I'm going to say that after reading that book, you are going to be cursed and you are not going to go to heaven if you stop believing in God. Confirmation bias. I am going to find information that supports my existing beliefs. And what does it do to you? It invalidates and undercuts you, right? And it's really hard to then say, hey, mom, I understand that, but I'm suffering and I need my faith to be reawakened. A mom who understands and isn't very religious, overly religious, would say, I understand. And you have to walk this walk the way that you have to. You should not pretend. Instead of mom saying that, mom says, nope, here's all the research articles that says you're going to the fiery place if you don't believe in God. Here's all the research stuff. You've backslid. Here's all the research papers and articles that says that if you backslide, you're a sin, you're a curse, this, that, the other, right? I know all of you have probably had that experience. Excuse me. So confirmation bias, right? That's a really tough one, because if you go to mom and dad or a family member or a loved one and you say, you know what, this is what's happening to me. I need out of this. I feel so very trapped, or, I believe that I'm being harassed. And, we're going to get into some of that too later. Confirmation bias with your mom, dad, husband, wife, whoever this person is I'm going to find information. I'm going to find information to kind of contradict what you're telling me, and I'm going to make sure that I find the best information. There's some people like that too, right, guys? I know you've experienced this. I'm going to find the best information to come up against what you believe, So that's an example. Now, another term, before I go to the chat box, another term that I want to throw out here, there's two, but the next one is illusory truth effect. Illusory truth effect. And this is basically the idea that if something is repeated over and over and over, even if it doesn't have an objective base, it is true. It is true. So let's say, for example, you go to your sibling. You're sharing with your sibling that you feel the family is completely against you, that from birth, you were not wanted, you were disliked, you were not loved, paid attention to, that your life and your siblings' life are vastly different. Illusory truth effect comes in when there is a belief in something that is repeated, right? So mom says she loves us over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. It must be true. Or no parent ever hates their child, right? And if I hear that over and over in my life, over and over again, then it's almost like I become conditioned to that statement. And if it's repeated, I'm really going to become conditioned to that statement. So then that causes me to say, nope, you're wrong. Mom does love you, because the world believes and has said to us in society over and over again that moms love their children. So I don't believe that you're not loved by mom. Okay. The illusory truth effect. If something is repeated over and over and over, it becomes more believable than maybe what the reality truly is. Does that make sense, guys? One last new term before I go to the chat box, because I see a lot of you in the corner of my eye chatting. Informational environment. Now, there's some research that says that an informational environment is the environment where you learn the information. So if you're learning information in a specific environment, you're receiving information in a specific environment, right? And there may be some difficulty navigating what's being told to you, that it's likely it's going to have an impact on how true it is to you, how much you believe it. So let me give you an example. Informational environment. Let's say, for example, you have, I'm going to say your husband, for example, he knows you go to school. He knows that you're in college to get your business degree. You decide to take a philosophy class, okay, because you just want to know about some things that you've kind of processed in your own mind and spirit. So you take a philosophy class. That philosophy class starts talking about harassment, stalking, terrorizing, a history of people who have been abused, neglected, terrorized, stalked, harassed, the list goes on. Okay. Let's say you go to your husband and you say, you know what, honey, I'm starting to feel like, something is really going on. Your husband says, oh, what is that? She says, or you say, you know, I don't know. Ever since I started taking that philosophy class, I just feel like someone's watching me constantly. Your husband says, oh, you think it could be true? You say, maybe. I just feel like every time I go outside, somebody is there, but I can't determine who it is. I just know it's somebody. I do. I feel that. Your husband says, I see. Has somebody called you lately? Has somebody drove past the house lately? Husband may say, you may say, no, I just feel like every time I'm out, something is watching me. Somebody is there. Okay. Your husband says, I don't think that's, it's not like I don't believe you, but until we have something to go off of that's tangible, there's nothing we can do. We can't even go to the police. And you say, that's true. That's true. And for the remainder of the year, you continue to believe in all truth and genuinity that you are being watched, harassed. Informational environment. It says I'm in an environment where I'm receiving information and it's going to impact what I believe and how much I believe it. And so it's quite interesting, right? This is how people get kind of wrapped up in conspiracy theories. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. That's how people kind of get wrapped up in misinformation, because if you're in an environment that validates and confirms what you feel, then more than likely you're going to believe it. Informational environment. I'm sure you have family members who are like that. Navigation of believing you can be really difficult. And so that's why this conversation is so important, because there's many dynamics when it comes to being believed. Excuse me, guys. There's many dynamics in being believed. And it's not always, I don't like you or I don't understand you. Sometimes it's a true legitimate concern. Okay, guys, I'm going to go to the chat box, introduce you guys, say hello. Let's start with Fairy Girl. Hello, Fairy Girl. Welcome back to tonight's live chat. I'm always glad to see you. Same to you, Tammy Nicely. Hello and welcome. Kevin or Kev Dower. Hello and welcome back tonight. Phoenix. Hello, welcome. James McDonald, hello and welcome back to tonight's live chat, says, hey, Tamara, and all from experience, weak-minded people can use this tactic to ostracize you in the family unit or within a group setting. Yes, they can. Let me kind of piggyback off that a little bit, jump on the bandwagon here and say that sometimes, you're right, James, sometimes it's hard for other people to believe you because of some of these theories. But also, if you hold, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, if you hold a particular position within a group or a family, that can also make it very, very difficult to be believed. So let's say you're the black sheep of the family, or the scapegoat of the family, or the lost child of the family, or the clown or the mascot of the family, right? Everything is always funny. You're never serious. Those positions can really cause you to feel ostracized and invalidated, right? Because the label in and of itself is the problem, right? I'm a scapegoat, I'm a black sheep, I'm a lost child, I'm the mascot or the clown. And when you have those labels placed upon you, family pushes you to the background, whether they realize it or not. And that in and of itself is invalidating. And it can happen in a group setting too. Imagine how race, age, and ethnicity plays into this, right? So let's say you're in a group where there's a lot of supernatural things happening. Maybe you feel like you've seen aliens before. Maybe you've seen some flying saucers before. Okay. But if you're Mexican, Latino, Hispanic, African American, Indian, biracial. Will you be believed? Maybe not. There's actually research that suggests that African Americans have the highest rate of being diagnosed with schizophrenia, delusions, hallucinations, and psychosis, right? Is that specifically because there's something in the biology and the genes that says they're more ill? Not at all. It's perception of reality. And a lot of therapists diagnose based on clinical experience, assessment measures, and clinical intuition. And sometimes so-called clinical intuition can be wrong. So our research says that African Americans have the highest rate of being diagnosed with schizophrenia, psychosis, delusions, and hallucinations. So race plays into this, right? It really does. Are you going to be believed because you are of a different race and ethnicity? I don't know. The coin is tossed in the air. I'm not sure what that answer would be. It probably wouldn't be favorable, though. Access to Rome, hello, and welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm glad to see you tonight. Figure it out, hello, and welcome. Thank you so much for that. I'm so glad. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Phoenix says, I should have a medal for overthinking. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. I used to do it too. KLSB, hello and welcome. Welcome. Always glad to see you as well. Tara, hello and welcome back tonight. Zeus Cleopatra, hello, welcome. I don't remember seeing you, so welcome to tonight's live chat. Zeus says, I hope I'm saying that right, says, my calling is already unbelievable, but there's definitely some toxicity going on. I've been through hell and back. Oh my. I very much believe that. Yeah. They go on to say a lot of toxicity. Yes, absolutely. Ackman 2298, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. Says good night, Tamara, and the rest of the chat. I don't know if that means good night, you're leaving us, or if that means good evening. I don't know. But thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you. Daryl Harris, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. I'm looking for comments, guys. Let's see what you're saying, Fairy Girl. Believing a victim forces you to question your own morals and may need to do. Okay, so Fairy Girl says, believing a victim forces you to question your own morals and may need to do something easier for others to not believe. I'm going to take the beginning part of that. Believing a victim forces you to question your own morals. I'm going to pull from that, Fairy Girl, because in a little bit here, I'm going to talk about conspiracy theories and how sometimes individuals who you're talking to, they will slowly move you to the realm of conspiracy theories because they don't have the ability to understand you, you know, and trying to understand you disrupts what they believe is true. And so most people don't want to have to deal with having to readjust what they think is true and readjust their mindset and readjust what they're used to. So what do? They just push you in the background and say, you know what? You're delusional. Yeah. Yeah, that is very true. James McDonald says, unfortunately, not everyone you know in life is trustworthy enough to share your experiences with. Yes, I very much agree. Sometimes you just have to hold what you know and keep it there, you know? That's a hard thing to do. Christina LZ, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to see you. Says, telling my father my brother didn't divide any inheritance from my mom. He was exed. I'm called selfish. Telling my father my brother didn't divide any inheritance from my mom. Oh, he was executor. I gotcha. I'm called selfish. Yeah. I'm not quite sure. I don't have the details, so I don't want to make any judgments on that. But let me just say that if your brother truly and honestly did do this, it's a possibility that your dad just doesn't, again, want to adjust the way that he's seeing things. So in a sense, if your brother truly and honestly did do that, and it's not something that you're missing or information that maybe you're missing or paperwork that you haven't got, you know, whatever, it could be anything. As long as you're not misunderstanding what your brother has had to do as executor, because the job is enormous and he can actually face a lot of legal issues if he does things wrong. I was my grandmother, my late grandmom's executor, and you can face a lot of jail time if you do something wrong. So I doubt if he's done anything wrong, and if he has, he needs to be talked to about it. But that's a side note. But let me just say, your dad may be experiencing, if this is true, may be experiencing self-deception, where, it's almost like the mind automatically shifts gears. The mind says, I can't really integrate this information into my reality, and so because of that, I'm not going to believe it. Self-deception. I'm going to deceive myself because it doesn't make sense to me. And if nothing makes sense to me, then it didn't happen. That's a hard place to be, right? Dragon Man Sassin, hello. Yeah, it is a fall day here for me too. It's just, I think we're 85. I'm trying to pull it up and see. Yeah, we're 85 here. So it's really hot, but hopefully you're cool and comfy. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. All right, guys, I'm looking for comments here. Courtney Fraser, welcome to tonight's live chat. You made it. Caitlin Brown, hello. Long time no see. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for coming. Glad to see you. All right, I am looking for comments before I jump back into the content. And let me just brief you on what's coming up in the content here tonight in a little bit here, because I'm going to make sure that I have everybody welcomed and that I've read everybody's comments. But when we go back to the content, I do want to give you some information on what are typical common toxic behaviors in a family where you're invalidated, you're not believed, and you can't trust people because they're going to see you as sick and unstable or delusional or confused, right? So we're going to talk about those common toxic behaviors. We're also going to talk about the research in psychology that helps us see why sometimes we're not believed. And I want to give you some information on why you might be invalidated within your own family. Okay, so we're going to break this down a little bit more. Okay, Jean Jaquise, hello and welcome. Glad you made it with us tonight. I am going to try to come back to that comment because I'm going to mention that comment. I'm going to make sure that comment gets attention because it's going to make sense later on. So I'm coming back to you. Phoenix, thank you so much for that. Yes, absolutely. You're welcome. You're welcome. And thank you for that. Yes, absolutely. I think welcoming and paying attention is how a relationship should be, a group should be. It's therapeutic, it's healing, right? So yeah, that's why I do that. So thank you so much for that, Phoenix. SH, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says, what if problem person talks about UFOs, Nibiru, pyramids? Once the excitement, notoriety, maybe. Well, yes, we're going to get into that, guys, in just a little bit. SH, hang tight, because I'm going to comment on that in just a second. Silent Walk, hello and welcome tonight. Glad to have you. Glad to see you. All right, you're my last one before we go back to the content. Nothing to see here. Welcome. Glad to have you tonight. Says, I tend to have experiences my family doesn't believe. Work issues outside of work. I keep proof of these experiences, and still my family doesn't believe me when I show them indisputable proof. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So one thing you want to ask yourself, and I'm sorry that you're in this position, I just don't think it's therapeutic to say that somebody else's experience, even if it isn't really happening, even if it really isn't true, I just don't think to say somebody else's experience is non-existent. I've been in environments where I've heard people say, you're crazy. How could you believe that? And okay, sometimes that's done in a joking fashion. Other times I think it's highly disrespectful. Now, there may be situations where SH mentioned there could be some people who want notoriety and attention. Very much true. There's also people who are delusional and paranoid, and that can be a part of it too. Paranoid personality disorder, we're going to get into that a little bit later. Paranoid personality disorder is something that a lot of people experience. It's not paranoia that comes and goes. I can be paranoid sometimes, just strictly the line of work I do can make me paranoid sometimes, right? Police officers are paranoid sometimes, lawyers, FBI agents, forensic psychologists, right? Criminal investigators. We have a healthy level of paranoia, but sometimes paranoia moves from middle of ground, moderate, to severe, which is paranoid delusions, false beliefs that are held to be true, despite evidence that goes against what you believe. Clear evidence could be right there in front of your face, and you still say, no, I don't believe that. I believe what I'm experiencing, though, right? Paranoid personality disorder is also at the severe end of paranoia. Paranoid personality says, I can't take a pill. I really can't do therapy to become less paranoid. This is a built-in part of who I am as an individual. That's a paranoid personality disorder. So, a lot of people have a hard time accepting what you believe. And so they kind of throw you in that category, right? If something like a paranoid personality is happening, or paranoid delusions or delusional thinking, and the quote unquote proof that you feel you have doesn't really add up to much, then that could definitely cause other people to say, you know what, I'm not going to believe you, right? It's kind of like, it's not confirmation bias where they need to make things make sense to fit their own beliefs. It's sometimes just the simple reality that what you say you have as proof is not proof at all. It feels like proof. It's not proof, So sometimes when all of that is the case, nothing to see here, people just kind of push you to the side, right? All right, let's get back into the content. Let's talk about the common toxic behaviors in your family. So let's say your family is very invalidating to you. What happens when you bring something to them, you talk to them, you try to get them to understand you? What's happening? Well, research suggests that sometimes something known as an emotional cutoff happens. That's when there's no emotional reciprocity. There's no emotional communication with you. It's like somebody has completely blocked you from accessing their heart, right? An emotional cutoff. Let's say going back to Jean Jaquise's comment, I think that's how you say your name. Apologies if I mispronounced it, but he mentioned the very, very, very complicated and unprovable gang stalking theory. And let's say, for example, you go to your family members and you say, okay, I'm being gang stalked. I'm being gang stalked by 4,000 people in two big organizations. I don't know how they got my information. I think it was when I signed up for my cable company. I do believe that the gang stalkers are my neighbors, my family members, my friends. I can believe no one. I'm going to lock myself in my home. I'm not going to come out. I'm not going to even get the mail without putting my hood up, putting some shades on so I'm not identifiable. I'm being harassed and I feel exhausted. So let's say that's what you say to your family member. The first thing your family member is going to think, most likely, and this has happened to many of my clients, they're going to say, first of all, why would 4,000 people want to stalk you? What do you have that they want? You don't have any secrets or keys to the puzzle. You don't have money. You don't have a high-powered job. What would they want from you, right? That would be something a family member would say. I've heard this in my office so many times. Another person would say something like, how can you prove that people are stalking you? Just because a license plate has the same number in it several times a day doesn't mean you're being stalked. Just because a red car drives through your neighborhood 700 times doesn't necessarily mean that you're being stalked. Okay. The other argument that I've heard in my office is, how do you know you're being gang stalked? I think you're very narcissistic because you think someone's thinking of you around the clock all day, every day. And that's not really happening. Okay. So those are three things I've heard in my office that family members will challenge you with. Family members will start there. If you don't seem to believe what they are saying, or you don't seem to show them what they feel is evidence, guess what they're going to do? Cut you off completely. They're going to do behaviors that creates an emotional cutoff. I'm not going to answer your phone calls anymore because you need help. I'm not going to email or text you because you're not hearing me, right? And then it continues on. So emotional cutoff is something, the lack of emotional reciprocity is gone. Or maybe I should say it this way, put it this way. Emotional reciprocity is gone. There's no emotional connection between you and that family member or person anymore because they think that something's extraordinarily wrong with you. Are there people who are sick who believe they are being stalked by multiple people? Absolutely. Absolutely. But is gang stalking a conspiracy theory? Yes, it is. But it is also a reality that some people believe is truly happening to them. We're going to get into that a little bit later, okay? Triangles and triangulation is something that happens in these very toxic, invalidating families, creating triangles where they feel that they are victimized by you, that everything that you're sharing with them or trying to get them to believe is incorrect. So triangles or triangulation is something that happens in these families. Alliances and coalitions are also something that happens. A coalition and an alliance. A coalition is, I'm going to take all of these family members and we're going to go over here because we all believe that you're sick and you need help. So it is a coalition, right? Me, mom, and dad, and our other brother, you're over there, we're over here, and we're talking about how much help we think you need because you believe that Elvis Presley is your husband, okay? Alliance, same thing, consists of two individuals, though, maybe husband and wife, mom and dad, maybe sister and brother, twins. We hold a certain belief about you, and we're going to just stay over here while you're over there because we don't agree. And we also don't care for you. And we believe as an alliance that we're right and something's wrong with you. There are a lot of family members who struggle with multi-generational transmission. Right? There has to be some proof to something in order for us to believe it. There has to be some kind of evidence that isn't just pictures or videos or photos that make sense. And if it doesn't add up, we minimize you and invalidate you within this family. Multi-generational transmission means it's going to go on throughout many generations. That same mindset, right? If your entire family believed that Diana Ross is their cousin, and that theory came about after they did an ancestry program, that belief system may get passed down for many generations. So it becomes a multi-generational transmission. And that what feels like a bizarre theory is actually a truth within a family over many generations. Okay. So sometimes multi-generational transition is evident in these particular dynamics. Speaking without knowledge or education. Sometimes if you go to a family member, and this is common a lot, if you go to a family member and say, this is what's happening to me, I really need you to believe me. I don't understand why you don't believe that Uncle Kevin over there sexually violated me. I can't believe that you think I would make something up like that. I really can't believe that you've closed your ears off to me. I was abused. I was violated. What are you going to do about it? And, let's say, for example, a family member may say, I don't believe you. I'm sorry. I don't believe you. Uncle Kev is a nice guy. He's a Catholic guy, and he believes in certain principles. He would never violate you. I think you're lying. So some family members and some people in the relationships that we are in, they speak without knowledge or education. Just, it's impulsive, automatically. You tell me something I don't want to believe, I'm going to impulsively say you're lying. I've had many clients over the past couple of years who have been sexually violated and harmed and abused and traumatized, and they are not believed until the other person comes to the forefront, which happened in one of my cases 3 years ago. The person, the sexual violator, comes forth and says, she's right, I did. That happened to one of my families, where mom and dad didn't believe that their daughter, that a family member violated her. And it took many rounds of police, many rounds of child protective services getting involved, many therapy sessions with me, many sessions from mom and dad to accept the truth before the other family member came forth and said, I did do it. I did do it. Okay, one last thing in this category, guys. Culture and ethnicity has a lot to do with toxic behaviors of invalidation within a family. African-American families, Mexican-American families, Hispanic families, Indian families, Native American heritage, all of those ethnic categories have a particular, often very structured way that they view reality. And if you throw them something that doesn't add up, the first thing that's common in toxic families that invalidate is they're going to minimize you. They're going to continue to invalidate you. They're probably going to lie and say they don't believe you, even though maybe somewhere in the back of their mind, they can kind of see there's something to what you're telling them, but they're just not willing to accept it. Or they completely minimize you and say, you know what, you have a problem. So culture and ethnicity is a major piece of the puzzle. Now, let's talk about what the research says. We're going to talk about conspiracy theories for just a second. Conspiracy theories. Tell me if you guys have heard these. I see you in the chat box. Tell me if you've heard of these conspiracy theories. You ready? I wrote it down because it's too much for me to remember. Conspiracy number one. These are the most popular conspiracy theories in the world. The Holocaust never happened. Okay? Princess Diana's death was intentional. The Holocaust, did I say that? Yeah, the Holocaust never happened. Aliens built the Egyptian pyramids. The CIA influenced John F. Kennedy's assassination. Right? And mass shootings. Can you believe there's conspiracy theory about mass shootings, that they are calculated to reduce the population? That's Sandy Hook Elementary School. When Adam Lanza went in there and shot and killed his classmates and his teachers, that never happened. Can you believe there's certain people that say that never happened? Or if mass shootings do happen, there's certain people who believe that all the kids that were said to have died never died. And the other thing I think was aliens built the Egyptian pyramids. That was another one. Those are the most, if you Google those should come up as the most popular conspiracy theories in the world. Research in psychology suggests this, that most people have a hard time believing things that is on the outside of what they categorize as normal. Here you come with a reality that is real to you, and you bring it to somebody that you trust. You're trying to get them to understand and believe you, and yet they don't want to believe you. So what do? They push you out of the realm of normalcy. They push you out of the realm of common sense, and they look at you and they have to categorize you somehow. So research in psychology says that most people categorize individuals who share information that doesn't add up, conspiracy theorists, right? Or you're buying the conspiracy theory. A conspiracy theory is misinformation that is confirmed to be a bias, and it's poor navigation of the truth. Let me go over that again. It's misinformation, right? Confirmation bias or information bias that is a belief of something that is hard to prove. There's no evidence to really clarify what's going on, right? So there's poor navigation of the truth. Conspiracy theorists. You know, it's almost like this situation where you have this information and you're trying to juggle it and you're hoping you could keep all the balls in the air. some people don't believe your theories, right? They put you in the category of conspiracy theory. The other thing psychology highlights here before I go to the chat box is something called motivated reasoning. Motivated reasoning. Psychology says that this happens a lot with people who are invalidated and not believed. You know, you go to a family member, a friend, a husband, a wife, and you're trying to explain something that's happening to you. It doesn't have to be a conspiracy theory. It doesn't have to be anything far-fetched. It could be as simple as your husband over there made a move on me. That could be as simple as that. Okay. It can also be my son is not my biological son. That's a delusional belief, but it could be my son is not my biological son. I don't remember having him or giving birth to him. Another situation that's a little more common could be something like, I believe you're having an affair. You're not telling me, you're not giving me information, but I do believe you're having an affair. Okay. It could be something as simple as that. Motivated reasoning is this. You go to the other person, you say, here's the situation before me. I don't know what to do. The other person selectively chooses information online, Google, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, where, or what used to be Twitter, whatever the case may be. They go to different areas of information and they selectively choose those pieces of information that puts together a cohesive story in their mind. Does that make sense, guys? They selectively choose information that really helps put together their preferred narrative. I'm going to take a little bit of that over there. I'm going to take a little bit of that over there. I'm going to grab that too and grab that too. And boom, there's the puzzle. It fits my narrative. And so sometimes, guys, you can go to a family member, a loved one, a friend, a boss, you know, your spouse, and say, this is happening to me. And the other individual says, I don't see it that way. I'm sorry. Motivated reasoning. I'm going to pull in as much information as I can so that this can make sense for me. And it's my preferred narrative. Lastly is delusions. Research in psychology suggests that delusions are somewhat rare. They're somewhat rare, but they do happen quite a bit. And if you go to somebody and what you're telling them doesn't add up to them, it doesn't make sense, they're going to throw you in the pile of being delusional, you know? So unfortunately, that's what people do. They don't have the patience, the knowledge, and sometimes the maturity to say, let me kind of do some surgery on this idea. So let me separate people who are sick from people who have a certain belief system for a reason, and let me see if I can make sense out of this. Nobody in your environment is going to do that, most likely, unless they're a therapist or an attorney. So you really are up against some preconceived notions about what you're telling the people that you think should believe you. Isn't that a lot, guys? Okay, before we get into why you might be invalidated by the people that you hope would hear you, let's go to the chat box. I want to see what you guys are saying and kind of engage you a little bit. Santa, hello, and welcome back to tonight's live chat. Glad to see you, says Tamara. I have many people in my family, from doctors. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Doctors, lawyers, and successful business owners. A few of the older ones are oblivious or dismissive of the narcissists in the extended family. Yeah. Yeah. If you go to them, do you think they're going to believe you when you say that's a narcissist? That's a narcissist. Sometimes, and we have to keep this in mind too, that age and level of education has a lot to do with what is believed and not believed. So you may be saying, you know, we have a family full of narcissists over on BG's side of the family, and you can't get your family members to understand that. And part of that may be because they lack the knowledge to understand what a narcissist is, what it looks like, what they do, right? And maybe they have a hard time applying that narcissist criteria to that family member. So a lot of times education and knowledge, makes a very big impact. Zeus Cleopatra. There we go. Zeus Cleopatra says, I'm going to go down as an orphan. That's how much my parents invalidate, despite them being alive. Still, it's quite sad. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Yeah. Invalidation doesn't serve a purpose, you know. You don't want to, though, for people who truly are delusional and not well, and they're highly paranoid, or they are highly delusional, or highly psychotic, if you will. They're experiencing an alternative reality, an alternate reality that just doesn't add up. For people like that, right? You don't want to validate something that's incorrect. Oh yeah, we're just going to believe that you're being chased by 9,000 people because we don't want to get on your bad side. We don't want to validate that because that is not provable. Sometimes people think it is, but it's not. It's hard sometimes to track down one stalker, much less 9,000. So we don't want to validate that, but then we also don't want to invalidate to where you feel exactly like you feel. There's no benefit to invalidation. None. Jasmine Walker, hello. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to see you. Searching for the truth, hello, and welcome to tonight's live chat. It's been a little while. I'm glad to see you tonight. Tammy Nicely says, my narc mother believed years ago that she was being poisoned by her colleague. This was when I lived at home. Now, when I'm psychotic, I think the same way. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember what delusion that is. It definitely is a paranoid, frame of thinking. It's a paranoid delusional state, but there's also a specific delusion, and it's leaving me right now. It'll probably come up at the end. I'll be like, that's what I was trying to say, but it is a delusional paranoia that can really get in the way of reality. And did you know there are certain research studies that says that if you have a psychotic disorder, or if you have schizophrenia, psychosis, delusional disorder, paranoid personality disorder, that even if you are telling the truth about something, other people will say, you know what, that's not true because you were in the hospital 12 years ago. Are we going back to that time? I've had some people ask that question of their family right in my therapy sessions. And the family member will say, well, are we going back to when you were not in your right frame of mind 20 years ago? Are we going back to that? Do we need to take you to the hospital? So you kind of become invalidated when you've received psychiatric care in the past. Even if you're telling the truth now or sharing something that's truthful, you're still going to be misbelieved, most likely, you know? Phoenix says, oversharing is another reason I isolated. My filter got broken and I didn't know who I could trust. Yeah. I could help it for a while, but I'm getting better, especially after learning about boundaries. Yeah. Sometimes oversharing is that automatic. I need somebody to validate me, hear me, love me, give me attention, something. So I'm kind of oversharing and I don't realize I'm doing that, or maybe I do, but I can't stop myself. That oversharing can be a trap, right? Because all an attorney, all a psychologist needs is, and sometimes just everyday people, all they need is for you to overshare, and they're going to make a quick judgment within a matter of seconds. And you're either going to be placed in the odd category over there or the psychotic category over there. That's just really how our society functions. If your experience is outside of the realm of possibilities, then it is likely, very, very likely, that other people will say, you know what, you're not well, you're not thinking clearly, something's wrong. Queen Common Sense, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to see you back tonight. Says, my mother is selective with who she believes. I can share a similar experience. Another of my siblings and my mother acts clueless and confused. Yet she will believe every word my sister says. Yes. So sometimes, remember, I talked about selective confirmation of information, confirmation bias, right? Selectively choosing what fits their narrative. Maybe your behaviors or history or something that's happened causes your mom to kind of put your theories on hold while she embraces your sibling who may be more stable or maybe stable in her thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, right? Or maybe your mom favors your sister, right? Your sibling, And so therefore anything you say is not going to make a difference. She's going to believe your sister over there because she's the favorite. So as you try to understand, why am I being invalidated in my family? As you try to understand that, keep in mind that those dynamics matter. Those dynamics matter. Maybe this is a favorite child. Maybe this is the rescuer child in the family. Maybe this child went to college, got a lot of degrees, is very educated, and stays out of trouble. Maybe mom loves her more. Maybe mom favors her. Whatever the dynamic is, you want to keep in mind that that plays into. It plays into that dynamic of who's going to believe you, who's not. Okay, I hope that made sense. I feel like that was a winded answer. Yeah, that's so good, Caitlin Brown. Glad to hear that. Yeah. Good. Santa says, I hope I'm saying that correctly, or Sana. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just going to say Santa, though. Santa says the truth tellers and scapegoats of toxic families can have all the empirical evidence present, but many are invalidated by narcissists in the family. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Very, very common. Jeanette, Healthy Connection Talk. Hello and welcome. I'm always glad to see you when you're here. Thank you so much for that. Glad you're listening. Brian Solis, hello and welcome. Glad to see you tonight. Says, what if someone is so fantasized about these subjects and always judging everybody or everyone but self? Yeah, I'm not sure I understand. So what if someone is so fantasized about these subjects and always judging everyone but self? Yeah, exactly. So there are people who are like that, right? They are in a mental world of fantasy and it impacts their behavior. There can also be a stage of dissociation, right? Where you're kind of in this alternate reality and you're kind of going through the motions and living life the way that your mind tells you life is, and that can be a difficult place to be, right? An individual like that most likely has had trauma, are likely depressed and anxious or isolated or withdrawn, or they don't have much communication with the outside world, but you can be very fantasized in your mind and dissociate from reality. I just pulled from your comment there for a little bit. Jasmine Walker, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. Reality Check TV Chicago says, welcome, by the way, glad to see you. Says, narcs don't want you to understand them on purpose. So I always tell them I don't understand what they mean so they can repeat the word salad. They were trying to deceive us with. Oh, okay. Maybe with some people, yeah. With some narcissists, you may have to do that. And especially if they truly are a narcissist. Okay, Gary, let's get into this. Let's just go into this whole idea here. So Gary Bennett says, hi, love your podcast. Thank you so much. Glad to have you tonight. Says, I want people to know I'm a victim of gangstalking by ATF Jim, who are predominantly Middle Eastern gangsters. After 5 years, I've been isolated. What should I do? Okay, so anytime, and guys, let me know in the comment section what you think of this, okay? But anytime someone mentions gang stalkers or gangsters, as what's stated here, my first reaction is, what's going on here? What's going on in this dynamic? And if you were coming to see me for therapy, because everybody's situation is different. If you were coming to see me for therapy, my duty, my ethical duty, my professional duty would be to tease apart what's going on here. Is this a reality, or is this a psychological reality that has been created by something, right? My first question would be, when did this start? When did your beliefs start? And then that's where we would build over time the storyline. And we might find some trauma there. We might find some loss. We may find some really horrific details that explains why the mind can sometimes, it's not everybody, can sometimes cave in on itself, and you begin to believe your reality is one way that it isn't. And it causes intense emotional distress. People who believe that they are being stalked by multiple groups of people, organizations, the list goes on, rarely has any concrete proof. Doesn't mean it isn't something they're experiencing, but it does say that there is no way for most of us to find that out or to really nail down what's going on. So you become the subject, not the theory. You become the subject. And so now it's important for the professional to kind of build this relationship with you as we explore where this is coming from. The mind is an interesting thing, and the brain is very interesting as well. So there's a lot of different ways that we can take this. For the purposes of this live chat, I'm not going to delve too deeply into this, but you are certainly not the first person who believes this theory, believes that this is an experience. And you are also not the only one who believes that family members don't get them, that this is really happening to me. There's intense emotional distress. The emotional distress is more true than the theory of gang stalking for most people. Yes, you are distressed, but why? And is this something that we should really believe and take up as something to figure out? That's why other people, therapists, doctors, lawyers, family members, they look at you and say, this is not happening. But what I can pinpoint is you have post-traumatic stress disorder. You have been diagnosed with a delusional disorder. You have had a psychotic mindset for years. You've been traumatized. You grew up in childhood trauma, right? So that's the dynamic there. Most people will cling on to those things and leave behind what you're saying in regards to gangsters and gang stalking because it doesn't add up. But what they will do is put you in that category over there that there's something wrong. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. Okay, I'm going to add in here Searching for Truth. Thank you for that book. Yes, yes. I thought it was a podcast. It's a book. Okay, thank you for that. I just put that up here. Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah. Yep. I hope you guys are getting that. And Santa also says the same thing. I feel like it's sauna. That's what I think. Tammy nicely shares, when I'm psychotic, I have the most distressing HELL. Yes, I agree. It can be that way. Tammy nicely, I really find it noble of you, though. And I hope that you digest these words. I find it noble and mature and insightful that you can kind of step back outside of yourself and say, that's me when I'm not well. That's what I do when I'm not well. That's extraordinary insight, because a lot of people, and especially individuals who believe in conspiracy theories, or sometimes they believe delusional things, or they believe things that are really not happening to them, they have no insight. I'm trying to think of the term. The term is ANOSOGNOSIA. ANOSOGNOSIA. I will put that in the description box so that you can learn a little bit more about that. But ANOSOGNOSIA is actually a neurological condition that happens with people who have psychotic episodes. They have schizophrenia. Sometimes they become very psychotic and unwell when they are going through a bipolar episode. Anosognosia is really this neurological piece of the brain that doesn't allow an individual to correctly identify that they have a problem, that they need help, that there's a problem here, that is an illness that can be rectified, perhaps, if we treat it properly. The individual just thinks that the world is out to get them. So I find it very mature and insightful that you can take a step back and say, you know what, that's me. So I think it's important for me to let you know that. It's wonderful. Okay, I'm still looking for comments. Hold on, guys. Bear with me, okay? Then we're going to go ahead and wrap up the content just a little bit here. James McDonald says, I've also learned not to take everything at face value. I've learned to trust my intuition more through time. Once I did, I was able to tune into the energy field of my environment and people there. Yeah, absolutely. It really becomes a strong intuitive piece, right? I think we're wonderfully complex human beings. Even as a therapist, and even when I don't have my therapist hat on, my intuition is so on that sometimes I don't even have to look at you. I already sense what kind of a person you are, what your attitude is, what you may or may not believe, right? And so, as thinking, feeling, intellectual human beings, it's wonderful what our intuition can tell us, right? And so sometimes your intuition, which happened to my mom years ago, your intuition says, I better back up from you because you're not going to believe me, you know? Consider medical gaslighting. Somebody asked me tonight to bring up the conversation of gaslighting. Medical gaslighting happens all the time to women. I'm not going to say my doctors are fantastic. After my concussion in 2022, my doctors have been fantastic. But have I crossed a doctor who's like, MRI didn't show anything. The first time was a fluke. The second time it didn't show anything. You're good to go. And I'm leaving with a terrible headache. My chest is hurting. I feel like I'm going to pass out. I'm feeling sick, right? Something's wrong. But do all doctors hear you? No. Medical gaslighting, that can also be a part of this equation where, you sit in front of a doctor and you try to explain your situation and you can sense automatically they don't believe you or they think you're highly anxious. And some doctors will go so far as to say, let's prescribe you some Haldol. Let's see if that works. That's an antipsychotic medication to treat schizophrenia and severe psychosis. Okay, let's prescribe you some Haldol. You know what? While I'm at it, let's get you some Xanax. And so that's a part of the puzzle, right? That there are some doctors who you can intuitively sense, to your point, James McDonald, you can intuitively sense, you don't believe me. That's a very scary place to be in, right? Women go through it all the time. People of color go through it all the time. Men are a little less likely, according to research, to suffer being disbelieved by a medical provider. Can you believe that? It's people of color and women that tend to get the highest rate of medical gaslighting. Nancy R., hello and welcome to tonight's complicated chat. I'm glad to see you. Says, my family either said, there goes Nancy again, or give me that look like, we're not going to listen. We're not even listening to what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, let me just also, as a disclaimer, say that some people do have a mental illness, a severe problem, a delusional belief system, paranoia that is hard to disrupt, right? Some people do bring things up and share things and talk about things that is a clear indication that something is wrong. A clear indication. The sad part is when that individual believes that they are sane when they're not. They believe they are sane when they are not. And so then they refuse treatment, and then they refuse therapy, and then they continue to suffer in their illness because I'm not sick. Who's sick? Me? No, I'm not. No, I'm seeing that over there. And if you guys saw my video last week, just those mini videos I post throughout the week now, sometimes I'm doing that, sometimes I'm not. You may have to go through my channel and find it. I think it was last week. I talked about non-bizarre and bizarre delusions, that a non-bizarre delusion is a belief that could very much be true. A non-bizarre delusion it's still psychotic, it's still an illness, but it's non-bizarre. It could happen, which makes it hard for people to understand you. A non-bizarre delusion could be, my car is not running. And I took it to that dealership down the street. They just got there. They're brand new. I took my car to the dealer down the street. And ever since they gave me an oil change, my battery stopped working. Now I can't get the car to start up at all. That's not a bizarre delusion. Is it a delusion? Yeah. Because if they did an oil change, they most likely didn't touch your battery. But it's non-bizarre. So it could be a possibility. So that makes things a little complicated, right? A bizarre delusion is there's a zebra staring at me over there, you know? So, Nancy, sometimes there are people who are ill, unwell, and they do need help. But don't you hate it when you're very sane and you just want somebody to hear you and believe you? That's what we're talking about in this live chat tonight. Jen Woke, I hope I said that correctly. Hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm glad to see you back. Carl Jones, hello, welcome, welcome. I've heard of MK Tech. Yep. Is that another conspiracy? Correct me if I'm wrong. All right, my last comment before we get back into the content, guys, and then I'm going to come back and talk with you a little bit, and then we're going to wrap up. Give It a Think says, how do doubters and disbelievers differ from gaslighters? Oh, that's such a good question. All right, I'm coming back to that. I find people whose first reaction, I apologize, this is me tonight. I find people whose first reaction is often doubt and disbelief are unable to entertain possibilities and unable to express authentic caring. Yes. Doubters and disbelievers are basically the same thing. They have a hard time conceptualizing things outside of what they know is true. And those are the people that walk that firm line, and they're constantly looking for research. They're constantly looking for science. They're constantly looking for tangible evidence, right? Those are the doubters and disbelievers that are not going to believe you. I once had, when I was in college so many years ago, I had a philosophy professor. I was learning some things about philosophy in my law program. And my philosophy professor would come in to class. He would absolutely denigrate my religious affiliation. Found out that I was raised in a Christian home environment, that I was the daughter of a mother who was a religious leader, that my grandfather was a pastor for many, many years, so many years you can't even count it up on two hands. And he doubted everything that came out of my mouth, everything. And even though I wasn't talking about religion, he doubted everything that came out of my mouth. He was a doubter and a disbeliever. Learning that I was homeschooled from the ages of 8 to 18. He was a doubter. He's like, how could you be so smart? You were homeschooled. I don't get this. And so he would pull me out in front of the class. My mom actually had to talk to his boss because he was just insanely just disbelieving everything that had anything to do with me. But he was a natural born doubter and disbeliever. And so no matter what was in front of him, it didn't matter, right? I wasn't a religious narcissist, so to speak, but he just couldn't believe that a true Christian could be kind and humble. He thought they were all arrogant. He couldn't believe that I was in college and I was homeschooled. He was just very disbelieving. He didn't believe the news. There was fake news, quote unquote fake news. He didn't believe politics. He didn't believe the law. He was just a doubter and a disbeliever. Those individuals, they love numbers. They love science. They love concrete information. Gaslighters are not like that. To be more specific to you, to what you're asking me, give it a think. Gaslighters are not quite like that. Doubters and disbelievers, again, they love the numbers. They love the data. They love to see the tangible things or feel the tangible things. They have to have some proof in front of them to believe you. Gaslighters are not quite that way. Gaslighters may believe you, and they're going to be a little bit more flexible in their belief system, but they doubt you because something about you causes them to doubt you, or they want to make you feel crazy, for lack of a clinical term. So gaslighting is sometimes very intentional. I hope that made sense. Doubters and disbelievers are on the side of, I need tangible evidence, I need numbers, this doesn't fit my mindset or my idea of how things go. Gaslighters, I'm just going to minimize you because I don't believe you, or I'm going to minimize you so you will start believing my lie. Okay, that was a great question. Give it a think. Thank you so much for that. Let's get back into the content. Okay, guys, I'm going to get a sip of water. My goodness. I thought we would be off by now. So we're gonna wrap up in just a little bit here. What's going on in your family, right? What's going on with the people that you really need to believe you? What are some reasons as to why you are being invalidated? The first thing that psychology highlights, and I also see this in my private practice as well, is that your theory, your experience, your overall experience with something that is hard to believe, it's not culturally and socially acceptable. It's not culturally or socially acceptable. Let's say, for example, you say, Uncle Ben over there sexually violated me for 5 years before I came out and told everybody that I was being violated. Your mom and dad may not believe you. Why? Because they may say, what took you so long before you could tell anybody? Why would you let it happen for 5 years when you knew that we loved you, that we would protect you? So we don't believe you. We don't believe you. You waited too long to tell anybody. You know, why should we believe you? It doesn't fit their narrative. It doesn't fit culturally and socially. Families where there is a power hierarchy, where there's, mom and dad are at the very top, the siblings are down here, the younger siblings are here. There's a hierarchy. Excuse me. There's a hierarchy within the family. It's going to make it really difficult to be believed, because that hierarchy is a socially and culturally accepted thing. And you're not going to be a daughter, for example, and go to their father, who's at the top of the hierarchy, and say that you were violated by Uncle Ben. Because that's not something that he is used to dealing with. And that is not something that happens in your family. That's the cultural element of that. The social element is, we're not used to considering this, so it doesn't exist. Okay, so it's outside of the cultural and the social norms. Okay. The other piece of this is polarization or dichotomous thinking. You may go to a family member, your spouse, and they see things in black and white. Those are the doubters and the disbelievers. They see things in black and white. They're not able to consider the gray. There's no balance. There's no middle ground. It's always yay or nay, A or B, no or yes. There's no maybe. There's no in between. Dichotomous thinking. Also, selective overconfidence is something that psychology tends to highlight as something that makes it hard for people to believe you. Selective overconfidence. You tell me that you saw aliens last year, or let me give you a more relatable example. You told me that the boss is against you and wants to get you fired by the higher ups. What's your proof of that? Because I thought he was the one that got you the job. And then the individual who has those doubting theories about you, they become overconfident, selective overconfidence. I'm going to stand my ground confidently because I choose to believe that what you're telling me is not true. The boss is not trying to get you fired by the higher ups. He actually got you this job. And so the person just believes that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is what it is. It's selective overconfidence. Fake news. I know that's Trump's big thing, but I have to bring it up. Fake news. There's a theory that really encircles fake news. And it says that if something is repeated over and over and over and over, which happens in the media, that it makes it more likely that it's true. So if you bring something to somebody and they haven't been introduced to this over and over and over, they are more likely to doubt you than they are to believe you. I hope that makes sense. Your sibling and family position really makes a difference. We talked about it a little bit earlier, so I'm not going to spend much time on this, but your family and sibling position makes it makes an impact on who believes you within your family, right? If you're the little brother who's been the lost child and you don't really have an identity and you've always been the quiet one, you may not be believed. But if you're the successful older brother who's an attorney and is always in the media, is always online, is always talking to people, and he has a certain level of confidence, it's likely that he's going to be more believed over you. That's the sad reality of that. There's a concept known as denialism. I live my life and I exist in a world where there's denial. I live in a mental world of denialism. I can't look at your truth. I can't consider your truth. And I won't, because I have to live in a world of denial. That's the only way that I can make it, Some people are like that. We also talked about mental illness, delusions, schizophrenia, conspiracy theories. All of that is also in this category. You're going to be invalidated if there's a history of mental illness, if there's a history of substance abuse, if there's a history of believing conspiracy theories. That's also going to make it difficult. And lastly, in this category, some people, and especially family members, who don't want to lose their own way that they see life, they're going to invalidate you and kind of minimize your experience so that they can maintain control. Maintaining control for most people is standing firm on what they believe. And so here you come with these theories that just doesn't make sense, that you've been violated, that you've been abused, that you were in a marriage of domestic violence, that your husband had an affair on you, your wife had an affair on you, that you've been stalked by 9,000 people, that, somebody's tapping your phones and living in your attic, that somebody's calling your phone over and over and over. You bring all those theories to someone that is not used to considering the possibility of it. They are going to invalidate, minimize you, again, to maintain control. I'm trying to say two things in one, to maintain control. I hope that makes sense. This is a lot, right, guys? It's a lot. Okay, let's go to the chat box. I'm going to engage you, and then we're going to wrap up. I'm so used to seeing you guys 2 nights in a row, so I'll be glad when I can get back to next week. Okay, looking for comments. Gary Bennett says, get documentation, write a journal, and inform your local general practitioner. Documents by doctors will unravel the lies and deception of gang stalkers. Sometimes not. Sometimes you go to a doctor, they're going to diagnose you with something, and maybe you do need to be diagnosed, and maybe you do need to be treated, and that's okay too. At least you're going to get help. The other side of the coin is this, that they may document your beliefs, but they're also documenting that you have a problem, and this is where treatment comes in, right? What's so wonderful about professionals is that they have a way of validating your experience, letting you know that, okay, you truly believe this is happening. It is, and this is how I am as a provider. It's causing emotional and psychological distress. We have to fix this. And so, yes, good doctors and good therapists, good psychotherapists, clinical professionals, yes, they do document, and they do it in a way that is favorable, right? It makes sense to insurance companies. It makes sense to other providers who are treating you. It creates a story. Our medical documentation is really a story. It's a story. Every single appointment you have adds to the last part of your story, right? So truly ethical and well-versed professionals know how to document. Doesn't mean that they're going to document that you're well or that there's a such thing as gang stalkers, but will they document that this is something that you're afraid of, something that's, you feel that's happening, something that is really causing emotional distress? Yes. Yes. Okay. Carl Jones says, plenty of factual books on the targeted individual program. I wouldn't say factual books. I've actually read a few of them. I wouldn't say factual. I would say they're conspiracy. If you go into Barnes and Noble, okay, or you go into Amazon, type in one of those books. It's going to be in the section of mystery, conspiracy theories. There's a book called Beyond the Dream. That's a book that my mom actually used to read. It's pretty interesting, but he had some ideas around some mystical experiences. I can't think of the other. It's slipping my mind. My mom used to have the book and I can't remember what it is, but all of those kind of books that people strongly claim are factual are not factual. They are quote unquote factual based on the fact that confirmation bias is happening, right? You find information to fit your narrative and you just pull it in wherever, and then you run with it and say, this is factual. Have we had issues in our society in the past where there has been monitoring, there has been wiretapping, there has been challenges where your privacy is being disregarded. 100%. Are we being watched on a daily basis? Assume you are. Assume you are, right? If you go to a Starbucks nowadays, there are people doing this sometimes in the whole Starbucks. One day I saw a whole camera crew at Starbucks. Why? Because somebody was a famous YouTuber. And I'm at the drive-through and I'm like, oh my Lord. They're in the Starbucks with like 2 camera guys, bright lights. Like, that is ridiculous, right? So just assume you're being watched, okay? The other piece of that is we're being monitored through surveillance all the time. Go to a store and you will look somewhere and find a camera, go to a medical facility, you're being watched. I'm not even sure sometimes I even trust the restrooms in medical facilities. Why? I know the stories. And there's been stories of peepers, right? Other people in other stalls hooking things up and watching. Are there situations where landlords have come into your home, perhaps, or your apartment, whatever you're renting, to look around, to look through your things, to place a camera, to place a speaker, to tap things? 100%. 100%. I had one client about 7 or 8 years ago who went through that very thing. The landlord, she got him on camera. I encouraged her to put a camera in her bedroom. 2 weeks into it, caught him on camera, snooping in her bedroom. He had a thing for her, So do these things happen? Yes. Are there people who say that there are facts and there are none? Yes. Because to them, it's facts. But this is also what I want you to walk away with this conversation with. Everybody else doesn't always see it as facts, right? And a lot of times it isn't. Facts for law enforcement is really a large base, meaning facts for them has to meet a certain criteria. And if it doesn't meet a certain criteria on their list, right, as law enforcement, police officers, even as therapists and psychologists, it's not factual. It's not meeting that criteria, if that makes sense. So that's why a lot of people go to mental health professionals and they get called sick, unstable. Sometimes that is true. Other times it isn't. Okay. Let's keep moving, guys. Flora, hello. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to have you in tonight's chat. Yes. Yep. Yes. Agree. West Indians. Yes. Agree. Absolutely. Yep. Latino father. She says, yep. So true. Yep. Yeah. My family, and I've shared this with you guys, my family's pretty split down the middle. On my grandmother's side and my grandfather's side, they are mixed. But on my biological father's side, there is multi-ethnic blood on that side. So we've got African-American, my father's side of the family. We have family members who are white. We have family members who are Latina. We have family members who are West Indians as well on my dad's side. My dad, German heritage. And then on my mom's side of the family, where my grandfather is, there is a Native American Apache and African American heritage. And both of those, okay, can you imagine how confused I was trying to figure out who I was? And it took a lot of research for me to figure this out. Well, on my dad's side, they believe a lot of conspiracy theory. On my mom's side, don't even mention conspiracy theory, okay? Because if you mention that, you're going to be tagged psychotic. So culture and ethnicity, remember we talked about that a couple minutes ago, guys. It really makes an impact. Nancy says, it really hurt when not one of them believed me. I feel like I, as the scapegoat, was set up by my dark, empathic mother. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry about that, Nancy. I wish I had more to say on that. I just don't want to presuppose. So I'm kind of holding back what I'm thinking. Zeus, I don't disagree with that. To a certain extent, I don't disagree with that. Jen Woke says, I shared with close friends and family that I was being gang stalked and harassed online. They all only brushed it off like nothing or laughed about it. um, or laughed about it. Yeah, prayed to God and stand up for myself. Yeah, right. It's everything that I just said. So I digress. The nurse who loved me 89. Hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. We're going to sign off here in literally 3 minutes. Welcome. Glad to have you. Says, I grew up with a mom telling me that aliens built the pyramids. Oh, geez. Yeah. Yeah. One of my mom's close family friends said that she saw an alien walking in the city where my mom was living at the time. I think it was like, I don't know. I can't think of the area that she was. It left my mind. But, my mom bought into that friend. Why? She was educated, beautiful, successful, mature, motivated, a go-getter. And my mom looked at her and said, if she says aliens are real, aliens are real. And so my mom believed that for a lot of years, a lot of a lot of years. And so as I was coming up, I remember just sitting thinking, oh my God, I hope this goes away at some point. Sunwater shares my experience as well. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says the aliens building the pyramids got me. Yes, I know. We need a support group just for us, don't we? Okay, I'm gonna mess this up, but forgive me in advance. Ash Shakura Whitaker, hello and welcome. Glad to have you tonight. Says, yes, I have heard those conspiracy theories. Yeah, Jeanette puts up here, bias narrative. Thank you, Jeanette. I appreciate you. All right, just looking for people. I don't want to miss anyone. Siobhan, hello and welcome. Glad to have you tonight. Brian Sala says, I don't seek validation but my own. Yeah, to a certain extent, right? I think it's wise to say, okay, I don't need anyone's validation. So for 80% of my life experience, I'm okay validating myself. But I'll leave that 10 to 20% open for possibilities, because I don't want to have dichotomous thinking. I don't want to have black and white thinking where I get confused or I really drive home this belief system and it's wrong. So I'm going to leave that 10 to 20% open for possibilities because that's healthy. I'll take the other 80% and I'll validate myself. That's one way to look at this. Thank you, Phoenix. All right, Shannon Duncan, hello and welcome. Glad to have you. Says the narc just came home from work. Heap. Okay. She's searching for an issue to have. Shaking my head. Oh, that's awful. I'm sorry. That's awful. Ugh. DJ, hello and welcome. I'm always glad to see you in the comment section. Glad to have you tonight. Shinadol 77, I probably messed that up. Forgive me. Hello and welcome. All right, I'm just scanning. I don't want to miss anyone. Jonda Hall, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. I hope I said that correctly. Says she thinks I'm cheating and then she broke up with me. Why do I lie when I get scared? Well, I mean, that's a whole other live chat. We're going to get to that in a next couple of live chats. I don't know. There's many reasons. I will post in the description box my recent live chat where I talked about pathological liars or impulsive liars, compulsive liars, and maybe you can see some things in there that could be helpful. But if somebody thinks that you're having an affair on them that you're not having, and there's no proof whatsoever, you really are true and honest and genuine, and you truly are not having an affair, that is sometimes, depending on how much that belief has torn apart your life, that can sometimes be known as jealous delusions or delusional jealousy. And delusional jealousy tends to happen when a marital partner, a boyfriend, girlfriend, they believe that you're having an affair and they experience confirmation bias. They go out there and they look for clues, and they pull in information that validates that you're having an affair because they need to find information that makes them feel that they are right. And so they unknowingly pull that information in, and it's proof to them that you're having an affair when you're really not. So if her beliefs have destroyed your life, then that might be delusional jealousy. Jill Ganar, I hope I said that correctly. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Says, what about cyber stalking and in-person group stalking coordinated by someone who knows you? Yeah, that can happen. Yep. Cyber stalking can definitely happen. And sometimes, let's say, for example, in high school environments, I treat a lot of teenagers. There are adolescents who they tap into their friend Susie over there, and then they start talking, and then they bring in Jennifer, and they start talking, and then they bring in Nancy. And so before you know it, they've got four people. It's the four of them or the three of them, seven of them who are now harassing the one girl over there in the corner at school who never bothers anybody because she's quote unquote strange. That can happen. So cyber stalking, yes, and in-person group stalking can definitely happen. Okay. All right, guys. Lemon Squeeze, hello and welcome. I love that screen name. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says, I overshare. Yes, yeah, most people do. Thank you so much, Nancy. I'm glad this was helpful to you guys. Okay. To Hottie89, hello and welcome. Says, gang stalking is real and out of this world. A lot of people say that. A lot of people say that. Again, there's no proof. It's hard to prove. And here's the sad part of gang stalking. You ready for this? That in a group of people who believe that they are being stalked by multiple associations, businesses, conglomerates, people, family members, friends, neighbors, ex-lovers, right? In that big group of people, and sometimes there are quote unquote support groups for people who believe they're being gang stalked. In that big group, okay, we're not talking about one person who has a mental illness. We're not talking about two people. We're not talking about three people. We're talking about a large percentage of individuals who are, as my grandfather used to put it, rubbing shoulders with people who are ill. And those people grab theories and they run with it. Okay. So imagine, I want to try to expand your thinking on this just a little bit. Excuse me. How do I want to put this? Imagine, I'm trying to give you a good example. Imagine being in a group where you believe that you're being gang stalked. You go to this group to be supported, to have a common ground, to share with each other, to talk with each other, right? Let's say that's what you do. You go there, you sit down next to Betsy. Betsy just lost her husband in a very tragic way. And she has just gotten out of bed to come to that gang stalking support group because she is lonely. She's attempted suicide. It failed. And she misses her husband. Since the death of her husband, she believes she's being followed by 4,000, 9,000 people. So now you're sitting next to Betsy. Betsy is sitting next to Jim, and Jim has been in the hospital several times for psychosis. Then you're sitting next to Bob, and Bob is a pathological liar who likes to stir the pot and get things running. Of course, he'd be at a gang stalking support group. Next to Bob is somebody else who believes in conspiracy theories, right? In that group, you don't know who's running with what theory and why and where they're coming from. And so this is why gang stalking is so difficult to conceptualize and talk about and process and explore, right? Because again, you don't know who's there with you. You don't know who's in these online support groups. You don't know who is there in the midst of you, right? Saying that they are also being gang stalked. Well, they may just be saying that because they're a pathological liar and they want attention. They could also be saying that they're gang stalked because they're going through a psychosis and they can't tell heads or tails of much of anything, right? So I guess my point is this, that it's really, really hard. And I want to make it very, very clear that you're not just being disbelieved because you're being disbelieved and you're not well. Sometimes people on the outside could look inside of things and say, you know what, this is not adding up. There's no proof here, you know, and it's really hard to prove that gang stalking is a real thing when you have pathological liars that get off on going along with this craziness. You have people who are mentally ill who believe that they are the victims of this when they're not. When they're medicated, they know it's not happening to them, right? We also have situations where there's narcissists who believe they're being gang stalked because they're narcissistic. They feel somebody has them on their mind at all times. So law enforcement, they go through that checklist and they're like, this is not making sense here. We got to drop this, you know? So I'm continuing to throw things out there in hopes that you guys can hear that there's a reason why. There's a reason why when it comes to gang stalking. It's not that it's not that you're being harshly treated at all times. Sometimes it just doesn't add up. Keisha Carter, hello. Welcome to tonight's live chat. We're going to sign off here. I'm way over time. Says, hey, Tammy, your videos have been really helpful and insightful for me. Thank you. Yes, you're welcome. So glad to hear that. Okay, guys. Jonda Hall, thank you so much for the super chat tonight. I really appreciate that always. Thank you so much. James McDonald says discernment is key. Yes. Yes, discernment is key. Siobhan, I'm going to read you before we wrap up here. Siobhan says, yeah, as a surviving witness, I've been gang stalked for many years. They never stop, not even when in legal battle over it. Yeah. I like what Christina says here. Christina says that hurts to hear. Trauma creates its own story. Yes, it does. Yes. I like your comment, Christina. Thank you so much for saying that. Sammy. Oh, that's so sweet. I'm glad you were able to tune in. I'm always glad. Guys, let's wrap up, okay? Tinnitus abysmos. I probably messed that up again. Hello and welcome. Always glad to see you in the chat box. For those of you that, Jonna Hall, thank you so much for that. I appreciate the super chat. I don't want to miss anybody who gives a super chat. John DeHall says, is there a way to heal from being scared, then lying? I'm not sure I understand that questioning. John, feel free to email me, okay? My email is in the description box. Feel free to email me. I'll read your email and I will get back to you, okay? I feel like I've seen you in this chat box asking the same question. I haven't been able to read it, so I apologize for that. Guys, for those of you who I wasn't able to get tonight, I apologize, but just know that I hear you and I see you. Like I always say, I go back over these chats just to look at the chat box and see what you guys are saying. I also read your comments, so post them in the description box. I hope this was a helpful live chat. It really is tossing and throwing up a lot of ideas, right? And a lot of conflicting, you know, kind of clashing views, but these are always important conversations, right, guys? Next week, I will be back for Friday and Saturday, so I look forward to seeing you. I think you're going to like what's coming up. I'll see you soon, guys. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye. Oh, and by the way, I don't want to forget this. Thank you so much for wishing my mom a happy birthday yesterday. She was blushing for a good hour. So thank you so much, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.